This weapon has been striking fear into tanks for more than 60 years, the most used anti-tank weapon on the planet. Even today, it's blowing up some of the most advanced armored beasts on modern battlefields. But what's wild is that behind all its power lies a dark and fascinating history that makes people question if tanks even have a future at all. So how did this weapon rise to legendary status? And where did it all begin? Believe it or not, its roots stretch all the way back to 1931, starting with an experimental shoulder-fired anti-tank launcher called the RS-65. But that early version didn't have a shaped charge warhead, meaning it couldn't really pierce armor effectively, so it flopped. The real game changers came later, first from the American bazooka, and then the German Panzerfaust during World War II. The Americans kicked off the revolution with the idea of a rocket-propelled warhead launched right from a soldier's shoulder, simple, deadly, and portable. But when the Germans got their hands on captured bazookas early in the war, they decided they could take it to another level, and oh, did they ever! That's when they created the Panzerschreck, which literally translates to tank terror. This beast packed a massive warhead that could punch through an incredible 200 millimeters of armor, which was absolutely brutal for its time. The downside? It required a crew and some serious training to use properly. Not ones to settle, the Germans then went for something even simpler, cheaper, lighter, and easy enough for almost any soldier to use on the front lines. Enter the Panzerfaust, meaning arm fist, a disposable, one-shot anti-tank launcher that could destroy nearly any tank in the world back then. It was raw, powerful, and terrifyingly effective. But it wasn't perfect. The first Panzerfaust models had serious issues with range and accuracy. They were only reliable up to around 30 meters, which meant soldiers had to get dangerously close to enemy armor. Later versions fixed this with better warheads and improved range, setting the stage for what would eventually inspire one of the deadliest weapons ever built, the legendary RPG-7. They even had plans for a next-level upgrade, the Panzerfaust 250, but the war ended before it ever made it off the drawing board. Meanwhile, over in the Soviet Union, things were completely different. During the war, they didn't have anything like the German or American rocket launchers. Their anti-tank strategy mostly relied on rifles and heavy cannons, which were powerful but bulky and outdated once tanks started getting tougher and faster. When the war finally ended, the Soviets took a long, hard look at what both the Americans and Germans had been building. Instead of just copying one side, they decided to grab the best features from both and mix them into something entirely new. That's how the RPG was born, short for Ruchnoy Protivotankovy Granadomet, or Handheld Anti-Tank Grenade Launcher. The first version, called the RPG-1, had a 1-meter-long launch tube, a slanted pistol grip, and a wooden shield to protect the user from the intense heat, a clever touch that became a trademark feature later on. It already looked like the RPGs we recognize today, but it wasn't perfect. Its range, accuracy, and reliability were all over the place, so the designers scrapped it and went back to the drawing board. The next version, the RPG-2, was a serious upgrade. It came with a more powerful warhead, better range, and stronger propellant. By 1954, it was officially adopted by both Soviet and Chinese forces. This thing fired an 80mm heat round, giving it a range of about 200 meters, and the ability to punch through around 225 millimeters of armor. Impressive for the time. Then came its real test, Vietnam. When the RPG-2 hit the battlefield, American troops quickly learned to fear it. Its explosive punch could tear through the thin aluminum armor of M113, personnel carriers, take down helicopters, and even threaten tanks like the M48 and M60 Patton. The blast and shrapnel from its warhead didn't just destroy vehicles, it shredded bunkers and wiped out entire enemy positions in seconds. But the Soviets weren't done yet. Engineers kept refining the design, adding larger warheads, more propellant, and even better sights. That work led to the RPG-4, a prototype that never went into full production but set the foundation for the ultimate version, the RPG-7. By 1961, it officially entered service with the Soviet Army, the perfect mix of simplicity, power, and durability that would make it one of the most feared weapons in history. And just to clear things up, when people say RPG stands for rocket-propelled grenade, that's actually the Western translation. In Russian, It means Ruchnoi Protivotankovy Granatomyet, which literally translates to handheld anti-tank grenade launcher. Pretty cool, right? So, now that we've got that straight, let's talk about what made the RPG-7 so insanely effective and honestly, kind of unfair against even the most advanced tanks out there. The secret starts with its simplicity. The RPG-7's launcher tube is built from 3mm chrome-lined steel, tough as nails and practically rust-proof. You don't even have to clean it much, and it'll still fire reliably every single time. It's not a one-and-done weapon either, it's reusable. Soldiers can reload it again and again by sliding fresh rockets in from the front. The rocket itself locks into place with a small notch inside the tube, holding it steady before launch. Now, here's where the design gets genius. The launcher tube is only 40mm wide, but the warhead extends outside the tube, so it doesn't have to fit completely inside. That clever setup lets it fire much larger and deadlier rounds without making the launcher heavy or awkward to carry. Underneath the tube, there are two handles, one in the back and one up front. The forward grip holds the cocking lever, trigger, and safety, giving the shooter total control. On top, it's got a battery-powered optical sight for aiming in low light, and the reticle is marked all the way out to 1,000 meters. Now, let's be real, at that distance, you're not hitting much unless it's the size of a house. That range marking is mostly for general aiming or area suppression, not precision shooting. In real combat, the effective range is closer to 300 meters, which is where it's absolutely deadly. But even if the optic breaks or isn't available, no problem, the RPG-7 also has flip-up iron sights, so you can still keep fighting. At the very back of the launcher sits a blast deflector cone, and this part is no joke. When you fire the RPG, it unleashes a massive backblast, a fiery explosion of gas shooting straight out behind you. Because of that, you've got to make sure there's at least 2 meters of clear space behind before pulling the trigger. Point that rear end toward a wall, a tree, or worse, friendly troops, and the results can be horrific. The blast can cause serious burns, or even be deadly if someone's standing too close. It's a brutal weapon, simple, rugged, and devastating, and that's exactly why the RPG-7 became the ultimate equalizer on battlefields across the world. Firing an RPG from inside a room is no joke. It's downright dangerous. If a wall or obstacle is too close behind you, the backblast can bounce right back and seriously injure or even kill the shooter. That's why every operator has to think fast before pulling the trigger indoors. One wrong move and it could be the last. The RPG-7 was designed to be used by a 2-person team, 1 shooter and 1 assistant carrying extra rockets, ready to reload under fire. But the real magic and terror of this weapon lies in its warheads. Because, believe it or not, the RPG-7 isn't just for blasting tanks. It can handle a whole range of targets depending on the round it's loaded with. The most infamous is the heat warhead, short for high-explosive anti-tank. It's the reason this launcher earned its terrifying reputation. The heat round works using something called the Monroe effect, or in simpler terms, a shaped charge. Inside the warhead's nose sits a cone-shaped cavity lined with a thin layer of copper. When it detonates, that cone channels the explosion into an ultra-fast jet of molten metal and gas traveling at about 10 kilometers per second. That's nearly 10 times the speed of a rifle bullet. That jet doesn't just hit, it melts through armor by focusing insane pressure and heat on one tiny spot. The result? It could slice through roughly 260 millimeters of rolled homogeneous armor, and back in 1961, that was enough to destroy any tank on Earth. Even head-on. Once it punches through, the effect inside is devastating shards of molten metal spray everywhere, igniting ammo, setting fuel ablaze, and causing brutal chain explosions. Tanks hit by a heat round rarely stood a chance. But it didn't stop there. The heat warhead also tore through fortified structures, easily cutting through a full meter of reinforced concrete. In city battles, soldiers used it to blast open bunkers and enemy hideouts, hitting the same spot over and over until walls crumbled like paper. Then there were the fragmentation and anti-personnel rounds. These didn't use a sustainer rocket, just a small ejection booster, basically turning the RPG into a mini mortar launcher. When fired, the explosions scattered deadly shrapnel across a wide radius, wiping out enemy infantry in seconds. And then came the real nightmare, the thermobaric rounds. These were designed to annihilate anything in enclosed spaces. When they hit, a small charge first spreads a cloud of explosive fuel particles into the air. Just milliseconds later, the main charge ignites it, creating a massive fireball followed by an extreme overpressure wave that crushes lungs, melts equipment, and wipes out anything nearby. It wasn't just a weapon, it was pure destruction packed into a single tube. The RPG-7 turned even small infantry teams into a force capable of stopping tanks, fortresses, or entire squads, and that's exactly why it became one of the most feared weapons ever made. Thermobaric blasts are absolutely devastating in enclosed spaces. The pressure wave and heat do unspeakable damage to the human body, and the results are horrifying. Even out in the open, the kill radius can stretch around 10 meters, but inside a room or bunker it's far worse. The explosion eats up oxygen, turning the air itself into a weapon. The heat becomes unbearable, and even if the shockwave doesn't get you, the environment will. It's that lethal. But the RPG-7 isn't all about destruction, it's also surprisingly versatile. There are specialized rounds for different missions, like smoke grenades for cover or illumination rounds to light up the battlefield. This thing was built for every scenario imaginable. Now, let's break down what happens when you actually fire an RPG-7. At the tip of the warhead sits a piezoelectric fuse, hidden beneath a plastic cap and locked with a safety pin. If that pin isn't pulled, the round won't detonate, and yes, that's caused some wild moments in real fights. Inexperienced fighters from various militias and paramilitary groups have fired rockets with the safety still on, causing them to harmlessly clatter around their targets instead of exploding. Once the safety's off and the rocket hits something, the fuse triggers the explosive charge. Each round even has a self-destruct timer set for about 900 meters. If it doesn't hit a target by then, it blows itself up mid-air to prevent it from landing live. But because so many RPGs were stored improperly or used by poorly trained groups, misfires became pretty common. End quote. Today, bright fire like fire life. Sometimes the warhead wouldn't go off at all. Or worse, it would detonate early, causing tragic accidents that wiped out the operator and anyone standing nearby. Here's what actually happens when you pull the trigger. The booster cartridge inside the tube fires first, shooting the grenade about 11 meters forward. Then the main rocket motor kicks in, blasting it to full speed. As it leaves the tube, stabilizing fins snap open to keep the rocket steady in flight. From there, it flies at around 300 meters per second. That's nearly 1,000 feet per second before striking its target with brutal force. So, how did this Soviet-built weapon, originally made for the Red Army, end up practically everywhere in the world? That's the wild part. When the RPG-7 officially entered service in 1961, the Soviet Union wasted no time spreading it to allied nations. Before long, it was showing up in Arab-Israeli conflicts, where it proved it could destroy tanks with ease. Then came Vietnam, and that's when the RPG-7 became legendary. The Soviets supplied it to their communist allies in North Vietnam, and it changed the game. It was cheap, easy to operate, and brutally effective, the perfect tool for guerrilla warfare. Suddenly, ordinary fighters could take down tanks, helicopters, and bunkers with a single shot. And that's how this weapon went from a Soviet experiment to one of the most feared and recognizable weapons on Earth. The RPG-7 became one of the most mass-produced weapons in history, with an estimated 9 million units made and counting. Like its infamous cousin, the AK-47, it spread across the globe, showing up in war zones, border conflicts, and yes, even on black markets, landing in the hands of groups that definitely weren't supposed to have it. It turned into the weapon of choice for anyone who wanted massive firepower without a massive budget. Its legend truly began during the Vietnam War, where the RPG-7 became a nightmare for U.S. forces. Fighters used them in brutal close-range ambushes, hidden deep in the thick jungle. When American convoys rolled through, RPG teams would pop up out of nowhere, fire, and vanish. These attacks wiped out huge numbers of vehicles, from gun trucks and patrol boats to helicopters, and even the mighty M48 Patton tanks. And that was just the beginning. The RPG-7 would go on to destroy multi-million-dollar military equipment that was supposed to be untouchable by such a cheap, crude launcher. Its simplicity became its superpower. Soldiers could learn to use it in minutes, and it was tough enough to survive anything the battlefield threw at it. Desperate to stop it, militaries around the world started experimenting with improvised defenses. At first, crews bolted wooden planks, metal sheets, or even cardboard panels onto their vehicles. It sounds ridiculous, but it actually worked at least a little. The idea was to create spaced armor, making the RPG's warhead explode before it could hit the tank's main armor. That early detonation weakened the shaped charge jet, saving vehicles from total destruction. But those quick fixes only lasted so long. The real breakthrough came in the 1,970 seconds, when engineers introduced explosive reactive armor, ERA, one of the most clever countermeasures ever invented. These were metal tiles filled with small explosives, attached all over tanks. When an RPG struck the plate, the explosive inside the tile detonated outward, disrupting the incoming jet and dramatically cutting its power. Around the same time, tanks began to roll out with heavier applique armor, extra layers of steel or composite plates bolted on top of the original hull. Soon after, another smart defense appeared. Cage armor, also known as slat armor, a grid-like barrier mounted around the vehicle that could catch or deflect incoming rockets before detonation. These upgrades worked for a while, but the RPG wasn't done evolving either. Every time armor got tougher, new RPG rounds got meaner, keeping the arms race alive and deadly. The deadly game of cat and mouse didn't stop there, it just got nastier. Every time armor got better, attackers found new tricks to beat it. One of the simplest and most brutal tactics was to fire more RPGs. Instead of relying on one perfect shot, soldiers started attacking with multiple RPG teams, blasting the same tank from different sides, hitting weaker spots like the rear, roof, or engine deck. Even if the first few rockets didn't break through, the repeated hits would shatter the explosive reactive armor ERA tiles, or contact-style armor, KJAMA, until one finally punched through. And here's the thing, they didn't even need to blow the tank to pieces. Just disabling it was enough. Knocking out the tracks, jamming the turret, or wrecking the engine turned those armored giants into sitting ducks. Once a tank was immobilized, follow-up fire or airstrikes could finish the job easily. To fight back, engineers came up with tandem charge warheads, one of the most ingenious designs ever. These rockets had two charges, a small precursor in the front that detonated the ERA tile first, and a much stronger main charge right behind it that slammed into the now unprotected armor. That double-hit system was a total game-changer. Some upgraded warheads could pierce up to 600 millimeters of armor, and that led to the creation of new, heavy-duty systems like the RPG-29, which came ready for modern battlefields right from the start. Yet, even with all these new weapons in play, the RPG-7 never faded away. It's still the world's most widely used anti-tank weapon, even capable of damaging modern beasts like the M1 Abrams. During the Iraq War, 1 U.S. Abrams reportedly took 14 RPG, 7 hits 14. Its armor held strong enough to stop full penetration, but the damage was catastrophic anyway. External gear was shredded, sensors smashed, and the engine completely destroyed, leaving the tank dead in its tracks. The RPG's deadliness shines the most in urban combat, where tanks are surrounded by high buildings and narrow alleys. Attackers can strike from every angle, including rooftops and windows, the exact weak points heavy armor can't protect. That's how Russian forces got torn apart during the First Chechen War in Grozny. Columns of T-72 seconds and BMPs rolled into the city and were ambushed by dozens of RPG teams firing from every floor of surrounding buildings. The results were devastating. Russia lost around 100 tanks and infantry vehicles in just a short span of time. Eventually, the modern world tried to answer back with something totally new: Active Protection Systems, APS. These cutting-edge defenses were supposed to end the RPG's reign once and for all. But even after 60 years, this humble launcher still finds ways to break through. APS tech comes in two main types: soft kill and hard kill. But as we'll see, even those futuristic systems can struggle when faced with the RPG's brutal simplicity. Soft kill systems sound fancy, but here's what they actually do. They try to stop anti-tank weapons before impact by jamming their sensors or blinding their guidance systems. The problem? The RPG-7 doesn't have any of that. It's not guided, not radar-tracked, it's a straight shot. You aim, you fire, and it goes. That means soft-kill tech is completely useless against it. So, militaries turn to the tougher solution, hard-kill systems. These use high-speed radar sensors to detect incoming projectiles, then fire small counter-munitions to explode near them, either breaking or deflecting the RPG mid-air before it slams into the tank. It's like having your own mini-defense turret attached to your armor. Systems like Israel's Trophy and Iron Fist became world-famous for exactly this reason. They were supposed to finally stop cheap weapons like the RPG from wrecking million-dollar tanks. And yes, they do work. Sometimes. But not always. Like any high-tech gear, even these advanced systems can malfunction or fail to detect incoming threats, and when that happens, the results can be catastrophic. There's also another serious issue: safety. These defensive blasts can harm friendly troops moving alongside the tank. Because of that, commanders often turn them off when infantry is nearby or when hatches are open, leaving the tank totally exposed in the most dangerous moments. And as we've seen in modern warfare, even with all these upgrades, the RPG-7 still manages to strike back hard. In places like Gaza, Syria, and Ukraine, even state-of-the-art tanks such as the Israeli Merkava have been hit and disabled at close range by simple RPG-7 seconds. The weapon's low-tech nature actually makes it harder to counter. No electronics to jam, no signals to trace, just raw explosive power. Then there's the issue of ammo limits. Active protection systems carry only a small number of counter-munitions, so they can handle 1 or 2 RPGs. But when multiple launchers fire in a volley, the system gets overwhelmed fast. A coordinated attack with several RPG teams can exhaust the tank's defenses in seconds, leaving it helpless for the final strike. And if all that wasn't enough, the RPG-7 has evolved again, in a way no one saw coming. Soldiers and engineers started strapping its warheads onto drones, turning a 1,960 seconds weapon into a 21st-century precision strike tool. In the Ukraine conflict, this tactic exploded in popularity. Drones carrying RPG warheads now fly directly into enemy vehicles, bunkers, and even infantry groups, and they hit exactly where they're aimed. These drones are often fiber-optic controlled, meaning they're immune to traditional radio jamming. They don't need speed or impact force either, just proximity. Once they touch the target, the RPG's shaped charge warhead does the rest, slicing through armor like butter. The result? Modern tanks are now desperately covered in layers of improvised armor, metal cages, wooden boards, spare tires, anything crews can find to keep drones and RPGs away. Some of these creations look bizarre, earning the nickname turtle tanks because of their bulky, shell-like protection. But even those makeshift defenses can't fully stop the attacks. Swarms of drones still find weak points and destroy vehicles worth millions using weapons that cost just a few $100s. It's wild to think that a weapon designed over 6 decades ago, the same rugged launcher used in jungles, deserts, and city streets, is now taking on modern tanks and winning. The RPG-7 isn't just a relic of the past, it's proof that sometimes simplicity beats technology on the battlefield every single time.